Whir. Silence. Everyone fears engine failure in flight, but what mechanics truly dread is the engine that fails in the shop, where a cheap airplane can bankrupt you before it ever leaves the ground. Some engines are so unsupported, so orphaned, that a single broken stud can trigger a 7-month repair bill for $28,000 or force you to beg a stranger for a part in a mason jar. If you think a legendary aircraft deal cannot turn into an unaffordable nightmare, you are about to discover the 5 engines that even veteran pros refuse to touch, and what really happens when the silence is not just in the cockpit, but on your bank statement. The Blanca Viking owner thought he had scored the deal of a lifetime. N8882V had good compressions, a smooth idle, and the Franklin 6-cylinder up front, a legend among those who know. But a routine annual inspection turned into a financial ambush. One cylinder stud fractured during a leak check. That is not a rare event on a 50-year-old engine, but this was not a Lycoming. The first shop quoted a timeline and said it could not get the part and told him to try someone else. The second shop thumbed through the logbooks and slid them back across the counter. The third shop did not even bother with a quote. 7 weeks passed with the cowling open, dust settling on the prop. The owner started cold-calling numbers from a Blanca forum, chasing rumors of a man in Texas who might have Franklin parts in mason jars. 14 emails later, a broker replied with an offer of $4,200 for a single used cylinder plus shipping. Studs might be available, but there were no guarantees. The shop agreed to try, but only after the owner signed a waiver, no warranty if the repair failed. The invoice grew with every delay. $1,200 for overnight freight, $2,800 in labor, $900 in shop supplies. Insurance lapsed during the wait. The hangar fee kept ticking. By the 5th month, the bill had passed $18,000, and the airplane had not moved an inch. In the 7th month, the part finally arrived, wrapped in oil-soaked paper with no return address. The mechanic eyed the data plate, then the invoice, then the owner. He asked if he really wanted to keep going, and warned that if another stud broke, he was out. The final tally was $28,000, a stack of receipts, and a logbook entry that reads more like a survival story than a maintenance record. For an 8882V, one broken stud turned a $30,000 airplane into a stranded asset. And for the owner, the dream of cheap flying became a lesson in what silence in the shop can really cost. Bob's workbench is a graveyard of engine history. Mason jars line the shelves, each one labeled in faded marker. Franklin studs 1968, valve springs 220 horsepower. Some hold only a single part. Others are packed tight, a jumble of steel and hope. If you call Bob, you do not get a catalog or a tracking number. You get a story. He will ask for the casting number, the length, the thread pitch. Then he will dig through boxes, sometimes for days, chasing a memory of where he last saw the right piece. 12 weeks can pass before he finds it. When he does, the price is not what you would expect for a used stud, $150, cash only, no returns. The invoice is a handwritten slip signed in blue ink stamped with a phone number. There is no warranty, no guarantee it will fit. If you are desperate, you pay. If you are lucky, the part arrives wrapped in newspaper, postmarked from a rural Texas town. Mechanics know this routine too well. Some refuse to even open the jar, worried about liability if the metal fails. Others will try, but only if the owner signs off on every risk. The lead times are measured in seasons, not days. The price for a single cylinder can top $4,000, with shipping and customs adding hundreds more. While the airplane sits, the hangar fee and insurance costs pile up. For the Franklin owner, Bob is the last lifeline, a broker in a shed, holding onto the scraps that keep old engines alive. Every part that leaves his shelf is one less chance for the next desperate call. In this world, the real value is not in horsepower or smoothness. It is in the jars, the cash invoice, and the hope that the next phone call will not end in silence. In a hangar outside Dallas, a Mooney owner stands by his prize, a rare M20L PFM. The badge on the cowl reads Porsche, and for a moment it feels like flying the Autobahn. The PFM 3200 promised the best of both worlds: German engineering, single lever power, the hum of a Porsche flat 6 at altitude. But when the annual inspection rolled around, the illusion vanished. The first A&P took one look at the engine, saw the metric fasteners and the fan shroud, and shook his head. He said, "No tools, no diagrams, no way," set his wrench down, and walked away. There are only about 68 Muni PFMs ever built. Most shops have never seen one up close. The cooling fan alone needs a puller tool that has never been sold in the United States. Porsche ended support in 1991, and the last official training class was decades ago. Manuals are written in technical German. Even the spark plugs are non-standard, and the ignition system looks more like something from Le Mans than Kerrville. One owner, desperate to keep his plane flying, tracked down a retired Porsche technician in Munich for advice. The answer was, "Parts are gone. You need a machinist, not a mechanic." Another owner remembers a letter from Porsche in the early 1990s, an offer to swap the engine for a Lycoming, installation included, just to get the PFM out of circulation. He declined, convinced he could keep it running. Now, when the alternator fails or a fuel pump leaks, he is left scouring salvage yards in Germany and wiring cash to strangers for used parts. Mechanics talk about the PFM like it is a museum piece. One Texas A&P said on camera, "I won't touch it. Liability is too high. If I break something, who is going to fix it?" The few remaining PFMs in the wild are flown by owners who double as their own parts brokers and translators. For everyone else, the Porsche badge is a warning. What began as luxury ends in exile. The PFM is not just unsupported, it is untouchable. A used Rotax 582 sits at the heart of a tempting ultralight ad. $3,500 for the whole plane, airworthy, with a recent top-end overhaul. The pitch sounds unbeatable, but the logbook tells a different story. Rotax sets the time between overhauls at just 300 hours, for a weekend flyer that might stretch a few seasons. For someone chasing cross-country dreams, the clock runs out fast. Every overhaul comes with a bill. $4,000 for a full teardown and rebuild, plus $800 for a piston set, and that is if nothing else is worn or scored. Some pilots try to stretch the interval, but the risk is always there. A piston seizure at 280 hours, documented in NTSB reports, sent a Kolb ultralight into the grass. The pilot survived, the engine didn't. Shop invoices stack up. 3 overhauls in 1,000 hours is $12,000, not counting downtime or shipping. That is more than the price of a good used 4-stroke. Certified mechanics steer clear. The 2-stroke stigma runs deep. They do not want to mix oil and gas, and they do not want the liability if a piston melts on climb out. Insurance companies take note too. Many will not touch a plane with a Rotax 503 or a Rotax 582 up front. The numbers do not lie. What starts as cheap flying morphs into a spiral of short time between overhauls and recurring costs. One owner's logbook shows the pattern. 300 hours, overhaul. 600 hours, overhaul. 900 hours, another overhaul. Each time the invoice grows, new bearings, crank inspection, shipping delays for parts from Austria. By the time the plane reaches 1,000 hours, the total spent on engine work matches what a low-time Continental or Lycoming would have cost up front. The real price of the bargain is not paid in the air. It is paid on the bench, invoice after invoice, as the dream of cheap flight slips away with each overhaul cycle. Continental's Tiara engine didn't just spin faster than its rivals, it introduced a new kind of headache for anyone holding a wrench. The design called for a 4.2-to-1 gear ratio, letting the engine's crankshaft spin at over 5,000 revolutions per minute while the propeller turned at a more traditional pace. On paper, this meant more power from a lighter block. In practice, it set up a perfect storm of vibration. Harmonics, those hidden rhythmic forces inside any spinning machine, started to pile up in the Tiara. Instead of being absorbed or damped, the vibrations traveled through the gearbox and into every accessory bolted to the case. Alternators, magnetos, vacuum pumps, Each one took a beating, cycle after cycle. The FAA took notice. Airworthiness Directive 72-2005 specifically called out accessory failures tied to these vibrations. Mechanics reported drive shafts with grooves worn deep, gear teeth chipped or missing, and fasteners backing out despite careful torque. A schematic of the Tiara's accessory drive looks like a lesson in unintended consequences. Every gear and shaft became a potential weak link. The problem wasn't just the cost of a single repair. Each failure risked a chain reaction. An alternator could shake loose, a magneto could slip timing, a vacuum pump could seize. And with original gears no longer in production, a broken part could sideline an entire airplane for months. For shops, the question wasn't whether they could fix a Tiara. It was whether they'd ever see the engine fly again after the next harmonic found a new target. A Piper Pawnee Brave owner gets the call every Tiara operator dreads. It is the shop foreman, invoice in hand, voice flat. The diagnosis is clear: gearbox gear teeth are chipped, maybe from those infamous harmonics, maybe just time. The next words land like a punch. Sourcing a replacement gear will run $4,200, if one can be found at all. There is no warehouse, no overnight shipping. Instead, the shop's parts manager starts dialing salvage yards, scouring forums, and emailing brokers. The average lead time is 4 to 8 months, no guarantees. If the part surfaces, it is often used, tagged as is, and priced like gold. The estimate grows with each line item. Labor racks up quickly: 20 hours to tear down, inspect, and rebuild the gearbox at $140 an hour. Add in shop supplies, freight, and the ever-present hanger fee. The invoice crosses $20,000 before the mechanic even turns a wrench. The owner hesitates, eyes the numbers, and does the math. The airplane's value on the open market barely covers the repair. Some walk away, selling as is for pennies on the dollar. Others double down, hoping the next flight justifies the cost. But for many, a single failed gear transforms a flyable plane into a stranded asset. The shop manager shrugs. "We can fix it, if you can pay for it. Otherwise, it is parts." The Tiara's promise of modern power fades behind a wall of costs, delays, and invoices that never seem to end. A Cessna 172 owner sits in the shop, invoice folder in hand, staring at a laptop that will not say yes. The engine is a Thielert Centurion diesel, Jet A, sipping, modern, and on paper the future. But when the FADEC throws a code, the panel lights up and the prop will not budge. The diagnostic laptop screen reads ECU locked. No amount of wrenching or button pressing matters. The shop calls Continental for an ECU software update. The answer is $2,000 for the code, payable up front. The owner agrees, and the wait begins. 14 months go by as the airplane sits, grounded by a problem that only a factory technician with the right software key can solve. Each week, the hangar bill grows. Insurance ticks by, even as the logbook gathers dust. Mechanics cannot override the system. Only a factory-authorized laptop can clear the fault, and the nearest service center is booked solid. The shop's hands are tied. Every update or inspection is locked behind a paywall. Every delay a new line item on the invoice. The downtime is not a matter of parts or skill, it is a matter of access. For the owner, the promise of fuel savings and modern technology is buried under months of silence and a stack of bills. The airplane is not broken, it is just digitally dead. Proof that the most expensive failure in aviation is often the one you cannot even see. A veteran A and P opens the shop invoice and points to a line item most owners never expect to see: learning curve, 4 hours at $140 per hour. That is $560 just for the mechanic to read the manual and figure out what is under the cowling. For Orphan engines, it is not a one-time charge. Every new problem means more hours, more research, and more risk. If a mechanic cannot get parts in 3 days, the plane sits. If the service manual is in German, the clock keeps ticking. While a Lycoming 0320 owner can order a cylinder on a Friday and have it bolted on by Monday, the Orphan owner waits weeks for a used part from a salvage yard. The shop's logic is simple. Time is money, and every hour spent learning a rare engine is an hour not spent on a familiar one. Most shops keep their doors open by moving quickly, doing routine annuals, common repairs, and standard parts. Orphan engines break that rhythm. If a mechanic has to call 3 suppliers for a gasket or chase down a wiring diagram from a defunct company, the bill grows fast. There is a checklist that filters the smart buyers from the hopeful ones. First, check the data plate. If the engine is not Lycoming or Continental, start asking questions. Can you get a cylinder in a week? Are there service centers within driving distance? Is the time between overhauls more than 1,000 hours? If the answer to any is no, walk away. Mechanics are not being stubborn, they are protecting their time, their license, and your wallet. In aviation, boring wins. The engines you see on every ramp are there for a reason. They are fixable, shippable, and understood. The rest are the reason the learning curve line exists on the invoice. Today, a plane's value lives or dies with its engine's support network. As manufacturers fold and digital systems lock out repairs, the risk shifts from technical failure to financial ruin. Even a $30,000 dream can become a stranded asset overnight. In aviation, reliability is not just about flying, it is about being able to fly tomorrow. The real cost of unique is paid in silence and dust. Share your thoughts below.